Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Jeff Colchin, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Unit at the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. I'm joined today by my colleague Teresa Wilcox to provide an overview of the 2025 through 2027 Violence and Delinquency Prevention Programs, or VDPP, funding opportunity. Through this webinar, we hope to address any questions you have about the solicitation, as well as the application process. As a reminder, this grant opportunity closes on Monday, April 6, 2026, and there will be many opportunities to reach out and seek support from PCCD before then, which we'll be covering during this presentation. Just a couple quick housekeeping notes. This recorded webinar will be posted on PCCD's website. If you have any questions regarding the presentation or the funding announcement, we encourage you to submit those questions to ra-pccd-ojjdp@pa.gov. That link will be provided later in the webinar, as well as included in the funding announcement. All those questions will be provided on a question and answer document, which we'll discuss later in the webinar. Today, we'll start with a brief overview of PCCD, then dive into more specifics about the VDPP funding stream, the funding announcement, the application process, and our eGrants application system. Additionally, we'll provide resources on how to ask questions and seek additional support regarding this funding opportunity. First, let's kick things off with a brief overview of PCCD and what we do. The Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, or PCCD, was established in 1978 through Pennsylvania state law and serves as the Commonwealth's justice planning and policy-making agency. We are directed by an overarching commission board, which is advised by 8 different advisory committees and 2 training boards. PCCD's responsibilities and programs fall into a number of different areas, including funding and grants, technical assistance, data and research, victims' compensation, and training, among other responsibilities. If you're interested in learning more about these areas, I encourage you to check out our website listed on this slide. Here's a quick snapshot of the types of programs we support. Everything from preventing and reducing gun violence, through youth-focused prevention, through juvenile justice system improvements. Next, we'll discuss a bit about our Violence and Delinquency Prevention Program's funding stream. The Violence and Delinquency Prevention Program has been a dedicated line item in Pennsylvania's state budget since 2009, demonstrating a long-standing commitment to youth-focused prevention. These funds allow PCCD to support early upstream strategies that reduce violent and delinquent behavior before youth become deeply involved in the justice system. Through competitive grants, we invest in approaches that divert young people from system involvement, which not only improves outcomes for youth and their families, but also reduces long-term cost at the local, county, and state levels. Oversight of this funding stream is provided by the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Committee, the JJDPC, ensuring strong accountability and alignment with statewide priorities. Next, let's discuss some of the details of this year's funding announcement. I will turn the presentation over to Teresa.
Thank you, Jeff. The primary purpose of this competitive solicitation is to advance state and local projects that align with priorities and needs articulated in the Pennsylvania's 2025 Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Plan, later referenced as the 2025 Plan, and PCCD's 2026 through 2030 Strategic Framework. Both of these documents are hyperlinked on this slide. The 2025 plan to the governor includes recommendations and strategies identified by PCCD's Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Committee as essential for improving the Commonwealth's prevention, diversion, intervention, and juvenile justice system infrastructure. The goal of this initiative is to strengthen community-based strategies that prevent youth violence, delinquency, and other problem behaviors, expand diversion and deflection opportunities, and support successful reentry in accordance with Pennsylvania's balanced and restorative justice guiding principles. Violence and Delinquency Prevention Program funds will focus on priorities identified within the 2025 plan, especially activities and needs that cannot be addressed meaningfully using other available PCCD funding streams. The anticipated impacts resulting from this solicitation may include improved effectiveness of programs and practices, increased use of diversion and deflection practices, improved competency skills of youth, increased youth engagement along the continuum of care from early prevention through reentry, aftercare, and transition into adulthood, improved cross-system collaboration and innovative practices, just to name a few. Under this funding announcement, consideration will be given to applications that directly advance any of the recommendations and strategic priorities of the 2025 Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Plan. But priority consideration will be given to proposals aligned within the following areas: youth engagement, upstream early prevention, deflection and diversion, reentry and aftercare, and cross-system collaboration and innovation. Please review the 2025 plan to the governor linked in a previous slide and the funding announcement for specifics and details on supported activities within each of these priority areas. In addition to the areas and activities noted in the previous slide, the competitive solicitation will also prioritize applications that serve geographic areas with higher levels of system need, demonstrate strong stakeholder collaboration, demonstrate a means for sustaining the proposed project beyond grant funding, demonstrate a track record for effective implementation of the project or similar activities, demonstrate a financial need, and those applicants who have not previously been supported through other PCCD funding streams. So, who is eligible to apply? Eligibility for these funds is open to local units of government, nonprofit organizations, private providers offering services to system-involved youth, and institutions of higher education. Due to the availability of other PCCD funding streams, school entities, including charter schools, are not eligible to be a direct applicant, but may serve as a subrecipient. Other entities not listed on this slide may not make direct application under this solicitation. However, nothing precludes ineligible entities from receiving funding from an eligible applicant as a subrecipient agency within that applicant's awarded grant to provide specific goods, activities, and/or services related to the implementation of the proposed project. Applicants must be in good standing with PCCD to be eligible for these funds. The applicant and the recipient agency's historical success in implementing PCCD-funded programs and initiatives that met their intended goals will be considered in the review process. Applicants are not required to have prior history with PCCD to be eligible. However, past performance will be considered. And applicants may only submit one application under this funding announcement. Submission of more than one application where an agency is the applicant or recipient agency listed in the budget request may cause the administrative rejection of all applications. These are the important dates to remember when considering applying for this funding opportunity. April 6, 2026 is the last day to submit questions related to this announcement. Monday, April 6, 2026, applications are due in PCCD's e-grant system by 11:59 p.m. Applications recommended for funding will be presented to the advisory committee in May and the commission in June for approval with a start date of July 1, 2026. All competitive funding announcements go through a multi-tier process that will be outlined on a future slide. A total of $5 million in state violence and delinquency prevention program funds is being announced to support this initiative. PCCD expects to fund a minimum of 20 grants with budgets not to exceed $250,000 over an up to 24-month project period. Funds for the proposed project shall be used to support projects that directly relate to the advancement of the JJDPC 2025 plan to the governor. Funding may support a combination of planning and implementation, expansion, or enhancement efforts to invest in both the design and delivery of an effective program and solution. Expansions to existing projects may be an eligible expense, but the mere continuation of an existing project as is will not be an eligible grant expense. Eligible and ineligible grant activities and expenses are shown on this slide. As these are state funds, indirect costs are limited to 15% of modified total direct cost, MTDC. If an entity has a higher federally approved rate, only this 15% rate will be allowed. Please review the funding announcement for greater detail on eligible and ineligible activities and expenses. Here's some additional important things to consider as you write your application. Entities that have previously received PCCD funding to support similar efforts will be asked to articulate the impact of these initiatives and also described how proposed new activities would differ from or build upon or expand previously funded projects. PP grant funding cannot be used to replace or supplant state, federal, or local funds that would otherwise be available to provide for program-related services. PCCD funding is to be used in addition to other funds that are made available for services. Supplanting occurs when an entity reduces funding budgeted for an activity because grant funds are available to fund that same activity. Requesting funding for activities, personnel, and/or items currently included in the entity's annual budget or through other funding sources, including salaries for existing positions, would be considered supplantation. All budgeted expenses must be clearly described in the justification box located in the eGrants budget details section. Applicants should demonstrate how all line items are necessary to advance the recommendations and strategies in the 2025 plan. Supplementing occurs when grant funds are used to enhance existing funds for program activities. Examples of supplementing may include items or personnel that are currently funded but not included or reoccurring in the entity's budget. Example, funded with other grant funds that are ending. Hiring of new staff, increasing hours as part-time personnel above and beyond current budgeted authorized levels, and increasing salaries or compensation for existing full-time staff, and increasing program activity or capacity. Technical assistance and support. All VDPP grant-funded projects will receive initial and ongoing technical assistance supports at no cost to grantees over the course of the project period. Required attachments, letters of support or other evidence of commitment from all named project partners, including proposed subrecipients. Resumes or CVs of key personnel, including any consultants providing services to support the project. And in addition to these required attachments, applicants may also use this section to upload any other relevant documents or materials, such as a proposed project timeline or work plan, a logic model, annual reports, examples of prior work in action, etc., in order to support their application. The application process is carried out in multiple phases. We are currently at phase 1, which is the initial applications being entered and submitted in the eGrants system. Once the solicitation period closes, we will move into phase 2 for reviewing and scoring the applications. A recommendation will be made to our Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Committee during phase 3. Stage 5 is the project implementation, when the projects can begin for all awarded applications. July 1st, 2026 is the start date for this current funding announcement.
Thanks, Teresa. We've covered the details of the application itself and an overview of the funding announcement. Now let's talk about the actual application process you will follow to submit it in eGrants. These are the elements of the eGrants application that are required to be completed and will be reviewed as part of the competitive review process, along with the maximum number of points each section is worth. Applicants are strongly encouraged to carefully read and review the written funding announcement document prior to starting their application in eGrants. Once again, as a reminder, applications must be submitted through the eGrant system. These applications must be submitted by 11:59 p.m. on Monday, April 6, 2026, in order to qualify for consideration in the competitive review process. A step-by-step guide listing steps 1 through 6 in greater detail for getting started in eGrants and submitting an application is included on page 1 of the funding announcement. Links to each of these steps are included, as well as a link to a Getting Started with eGrants video. Every organization must register at least 2 unique users in order to complete the grant application. These users should be listed as the project director, the fiscal contact, and the primary contact. If your agency is not currently registered in eGrants, please visit this page and complete and submit the eGrants agency registration request form. Please do this as early as possible so it can be processed in time for you to apply. If you need to register additional staff from your agency, please complete and submit this form. When deciding what access to grant staff that you are registering, these 6 unique roles provide an overview of what each user can do. Every agency should have an agency user manager security role. This person serves as the gatekeeper to assign and remove different security roles for staff under that agency. Please visit the User Manager Help Guide at that link for more information. As you are navigating the process, here is more information about additional resources that are available to assist you when working in and navigating through eGrants.
All right, next we're going to talk a little bit about how to ask questions and seek support. As mentioned, today's webinar is recorded and posted on our website, so feel free to refer back to this information if needed. You can also email PCCD staff at any time at the email address of ra-pccd-ojjdp@pa.gov. Any new questions coming into this account will be answered and then will also be posted on our online Q&A page, which is linked here. We encourage you to check out the Q&A before reaching out because your question may have already been answered. Thank you for joining us today. Again, please reach out to our account for more information if you have questions regarding this funding announcement.